What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to take up a whole video and just talk about Higgs in Death Stranding 2. I want to do a couple kind of character overviews. I was originally thinking about Fragile, and I definitely want to make a video on her going forward, but I thought, when I think about my favorite character in Death Stranding 2, I think it's very hard to say it's anybody but Higgs, and it's something I want to go into, though, in this video, because I actually think it's a little weird. In terms of his depth, I actually don't think he has as much depth as I thought he was going to have. Kind of his reasoning for what he's doing, it's actually not that deep at all. So we'll go into that. But again, you play this game, and if you think in your head, okay, what are the top 5 moments of Death Stranding 2? You probably have Higgs in 4 of those 5 easily. It's just every time he's in this game, and honestly, he's not in this game a lot. I actually thought he'd be in it more, the way Kojima talked about him and Troy Baker talked about him leading in. He's not in the game a lot, and I actually kind of think that's genius because there's a balance there, right? You see somebody too much, you see a villain too much, all of a sudden they're not as villainous, right? Because they're in your eyes so often. Something like Higgs, you do have to have this fine line of all right, he's so eccentric, he's so crazy, and he literally steals every scene he's in. If he's in half the game, does that weaken him as a character? And to be honest with you, it probably does. So just to kind of maybe give credit there, even though he's not in it as much as I thought, and even as much as they made it seem like, maybe that's a me problem, but I actually want to give them credit for that and say, oh, you know what? That was good. The way you had him in the game was actually extremely good. So look, again, he's only in a couple scenes throughout the whole thing. You have him originally getting introduced to Sam, and he doesn't even take off the mask, right? But you can just, the way he moves and articulates himself is incredible. Obviously, there's the samurai fight, which, goes beyond it too. Look, he serves as this, distant kind of villain. He is a person that they kind of do that a little bit differently, I would say, in this game, where it's his threat, I think, is seen by more people and felt by more people than the first game. You'll go to do deliveries, and a lot of people are talking about Higgs and his Ghost Mech army, right? A couple missions in the game is going to dismantle the Ghost Mech army, and even the ending of the game with the president of APAS is yeah, we funded that. And so he plays kind of a very interesting role, right? Because he's very in your face, and he plays a direct threat at the very end. But throughout the game, he pops in and pops out, but he's a background threat, right? He's there, and he's funding stuff, and some of the enemies you face in the game are because of him, but he's not always present. And I would say, it was a cool blend. And again, I feel like compared to the first game, I mean, yes, he was mentioned, and I feel like he was a little bit darker and maybe even a little bit more mysterious in the first game versus this game. This game, it's well, technically, he is inhabiting a lot of the things that you see. I guess the interesting stuff with him is they can kind of do it both ways. They can have this eccentric, crazy guy, and he can kind of do whatever because so many of those bodies aren't even his. I feel like I'm somewhat well versed in the lore, but not maybe 100%. Most of this game was not even him physically, right? Now, towards the end, and maybe he was there physically from time to time, but so many of these battles that he has, or when he freaking lights Sam on fire, or when Fragile comes in and does the job towards the end before he captures Tomorrow, so many of those moments, he's just living through his mechs, right? They're just these kind of plain slates. And again, I think that allows you to kind of go crazy because the first couple times, especially I would say the samurai fight, right? He's fighting the samurai, and it's oh my dear God, okay, he's severely weakened, but all of a sudden now the next time, I think after that, the next time he comes up is when he burns you alive, and it's okay, so he's back, and you don't really get it until you realize, okay, he's just kind of jumping from thing to thing. So it allows him to, again, kind of go wild, have these massive fights with a samurai of all things, right? But he can lose, and it doesn't even really, I guess, matter. It is flashy, and again, I think to get a little negative here, a little critiquing, I would say, right? The one thing I would say is, a lot of his character in those ways, right? There is a lot of flashiness. Now, I think personally, when he is telling his story and the camera is super, super close up to him, at the end, that is probably his best moment because he's being so real. He still has that personality that's unforgettable, right? And steals the scene. But the camera is so close to him, right? And he's being so kind of open. And that's what I needed more of. I think the one, again, weakness I would say with his character is, his reasoning is kind of just the same. Like, he still just wants the last extinction. They're kind of pulling at things to even make the logic work of like how tomorrow could even do it in the first place, right? So it's like, all right, that kind of is just like I don't know, like it kind of just feels like you going into the game, you say, okay, I want Higgs to be the villain, and what's his ultimate goal? Well, it's to kind of punish Sam and Fragile, which is very like, animalistic. It's just a revenge story in that part, but also there's a larger part which is kind of just doing what he did in the first game, right? But now he needs a new thing to do it, so he captures tomorrow. So I guess what I'm getting at again is kind of his reasoning and a little bit more of like the emotional, like why is he doing what he's doing. It was there at the very end, and I'm not going to take that away from it. But the rest of the game, it wasn't really there. I think largely it's held up solely from the. I don't want to take credit away from the writing either, right? Because like Troy Baker does so good, and we'll talk about it in a second. But if the writing's not there, what are you going to do? He's got this like imposing, like threatening side to him, and even though he's wacky and he does like little dances and he has this like outward kind of emotional personality, he still is able to like strike fear in you. And it's a power level thing too, right? Because he is very, very powerful, can do the BT stuff, can just pop up in his coffin portals whenever he feels like it. Like, the power definitely helps him. His look definitely helps him. The guitar freaking rocks. So there's so much, and I guess that's the good thing. I mean, that's what I think makes him such a good character, is even though, is he consistent? I think maybe that's the word. Like, okay, consistently he's kind of jumping around, but he's always consistently good. Okay, and maybe that doesn't really make sense, but I guess like, okay, he's consistently good with the way he moves around and talks and is like an imposing force. And then towards the end, okay, there's where you get kind of the motivation, but like the acting is always good. That's consistent. The writing is always good. That's consistent, right? So he plays, I think, such a great role. And I think, again, like looking through these characters, I do think I would put him as number one. He's maybe not the most important. I would maybe say that's Fragile, to be honest with you, but he's got such a roller coaster ride. He's got the flashier things. Like, it's hard too, because like, when he's telling you stuff when Sam's being burnt alive, you're so focused, on the action, on the act of doing it, that you're maybe not even so much focused on what he's saying. But he's such an interesting character. I mean, like, that's a character that I feel like, maybe it diminishes, again, that motivational side and like who he is as a person the more you bring him back. But you could put him in like 10 Death Stranding games and have him be in it for like 20 minutes each, and he would be legendary each time. And that still takes so much talent from directing it, pacing it, the writing, the acting, right? It takes all of that talent to make that work, even though I will say, I believe myself, I'm saying it. I do think like the more you do it, probably the weaker it would become. I was expecting kind of more of like a multi-layered, I guess that's actually the phrase that I have not said in this video that I think is the word I've been looking for. I don't really think he's as layered as I thought he would be. Towards the end, maybe, but I mean, just his goals are a little one-dimensional, which is fine. I mean, it's an antagonist, they can be like that, but he's so wild that I'm almost waiting for them to pull like just that one extra layer that I didn't think was there. And I don't know, like I feel like even the layer, when he's, shirtless and he's laying on the servers and he's telling Sam about, what it was like being stuck on the beach, which is incredible. Again, like that. I just need a little bit more of that, or maybe even peel the onion one more layer and let me get like one more layer deeper into how he feels. And it's so I felt like that was the moment they were either the closest or they flat out nailed, and I was just looking for more of it. But again, kind of pulling hairs because he is such a great character. But I wanted to offer, a critique and an analysis basically of him. Super cool. Just felt, the idea of ultimately it's to do the last extinction. And also, honestly, it's exposition. I mean, so many of these characters are kind of there to do exposition. That's like 90% of Tarman and Dollman. But I mean, with him, even him is like, okay, he's the one that delivers the bombshell of like, tomorrow's your daughter. And it's like, I had already predicted that. I already like was ready for that. And it's like, so he kind of got the honors of like, if you didn't know, he got the honors of telling you, or if you were on the trail, he just confirmed it to you. So like, I don't know, know, they used him for a couple different things, but part of it was like, you don't really know what's going on here, Sam, do you? And it's like, well, you could just tell us. And then like 5 hours later, he did tell us. And it's like, all right, well, I kind of knew that. You're using him to just relay information, whatever. So, you know, again, there's some ups and downs, but an amazing character. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.